your marriage is your mission. And it's important that, as you know, in everything, you have to have training. You want to drive a car, you have to learn how to drive that car. If you're in the military and you have a specific career, you have to have training in order to be proficient in that career. It's the same concept for marriage. God has given us tools in His Word to train us prior to getting married so that we can be constantly ready in our marriage for whenever storms and wherever things come up.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Chaplain Major Matt Spencer and Kristina Spencer about building resilient, God-centered marriages because stronger marriages make better leaders. Chaplain Major Matthew Spencer and Kristina Spencer bring over 20 years of combined experience in ministry, counseling, and leadership to their work with military couples and families. Matt, a U.S. Air Force chaplain with a background in security forces, provides pastoral care, spiritual growth opportunities, and worship leadership to airmen and their families, leveraging his extensive service across enlisted and officer roles worldwide. Kristina, an ordained minister, exo-marriage content writer, and certified marriage mediator, has led impactful women's ministries, young adult groups, and large-scale events while mentoring others in their faith and relationships. Together, they are passionate about equipping couples with practical strategies and biblical principles to build resilient, God-centered marriages, inspiring hope and transformation through their personal and professional experiences. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Matt and Kristina. First of all, I just want to thank you both for your service to our country and for equipping and encouraging couples because let's face it, marriage does not reflect the romance movies we see in the theaters or binge watch on our streaming services. Marriage is work, but it also brings great blessings. So I'm so excited you're here to talk about stronger marriages and how it makes better leaders because it's all connected. Guys, before we dive into all the marriage and leadership goodness, can you tell us how you met and how long you've been married?
Oh, so we met in 2001 in Wyoming. We've been married 21 years. We've known each other probably 23 years.
23 years.
Got married, and then we spent our first year apart while I was in Korea. And that was tough. I don't recommend that for anybody, as you try to grow your marriage to be apart. Mm-hmm. But, when you're in the military, those things happen and you have to kind of adhere to where Uncle Sam sends you. So how we navigated our first year, was through phone calls and she was able to come and visit a couple of times. But, that was difficult as we tried to grow, together.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I can't even imagine, I love you so much. Let's get married and then let's immediately be separated. You don't even get that first year is so important to even figure out who you married, right? Because you're no longer dating.
Yes.
I just can't even imagine. So now let's fast forward 21 years later. You've gone through some seasons and you have a lot of wisdom to share, not only just in marriage, but military life, which adds so much extra pressure on there. And you've just published a book. I'm so excited about this book. My listeners know my son has gone into the military, and I just can't wait for him to have this book and to read it, especially whenever he steps into that next season of marriage. But the book is called Valor and Vows, which is a tactical guide to mission-ready marriage. I got to ask, mission-ready marriage, what do you mean by mission-ready?
Well, your marriage is your mission. And it's important that, as in everything, you have to have training. You want to drive a car, you have to learn how to drive that car. If you're in the military and you have a specific career, you have to have training in order to be proficient in that career. It's the same concept for marriage. God has given us tools in His Word to train us prior to getting married so that we can be constantly ready in our marriage for whenever storms and wherever things come up. Because as you know, they do.
Man, that is so good. I heard somebody say one time, and it's so profound and it aligns so perfectly with what you're saying, is we spend, whenever, you're dating and then you propose and you're engaged, you're going to get married, we spend time preparing for a wedding. We don't spend time preparing for a marriage.
Yeah.
And a wedding is one day, but a marriage is, hopefully our lifetime. And it's
Yes.
so important what you're saying.
I was telling my son that almost exact same thing. I said, you've got that car out there. Okay, what did you have to do in order to be able to drive that car? You have to have education. You have to have your license. You have to purchase it. All of these things. How many cars are you going to drive in your adult life? Marriage, God's best design for marriage is one and done.
Yeah.
Till death do you part. So why not invest in that?
Yeah, in the military in general, we train for everything. That's why we're such, a powerful alliance when it comes to our war fighting capabilities and, you know, uh, how we represent, our country when it comes to our armed forces, because all we do is train.
Mhm.
We're always ready for whatever lies ahead because we spend that time getting ready, and I really wish we would spend that much time or that much effort or take our marriages and relationships that serious, and so one of the big reasons why we wrote the book was to be able to get couples to do that,
Mhm.
and utilize the book as a training tool, as a study or as a marriage retreat, piece of material that we can teach, or it can be just an individual read as well, but the development of it was for many different facets of building a relationship in the marriage. So it could be for a couple you're just getting married, or it could be for a couple who's been married 20 years and really need to work on a few things, maybe refine some things. So, you know, training in relationship and marriage should be just as important, if not more important than anything else, because that leads to, accomplishments, and it leads to just being able to, properly take care of the rest of your life, whether it be at work or whether it be, uh, with your kids, family, those type of things. So that's where that leadership piece comes in, I think.
Matt says
Oh.
that I love. He says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Mhm.
And if you're always ready, you never have to get ready.
Oh, yeah. That's
So when
good.
it comes to the mission, that's something that's on the forefront of their minds every single day. It's constant planning, constant preparation, constant training. So they never have to get ready when calamity strikes.
Mhm.
It's that same way in marriage. If we're constantly planning, if we're constantly staying
Training,
sharp
yeah,
in the word and all of those things, when that calamity comes, whether it's through a deployment or a temporary change of station, or there's something wrong with the kids or extended family or sickness or whatever that is, you're ready to handle it because you've already got those tools in your toolbox.
Absolutely. And it's so important. I mean, think about how, a lot of people go get training for their jobs, their careers. We get onboarded, all those things, and then we work on personal development
Yeah,
in leadership so that we can be better at our jobs. But how often do we just ignore growing and developing for our marriages, which is the most important, connection job that we have, because from our home life, everything else is going to pour out, right? How we raise our children, how we show up at work. I don't know of a person that has a terrible fight with their spouse and shows up to work like nothing ever happened. Like, I'm ready to go. It affects us and it's
100.
everywhere. And I love what you were saying about how soldiers are constantly training. They're always ready so they don't have to get ready. Like, they're
Yeah,
ready no matter what comes. And in marriage, storms are coming, right? You're going to have bullets of problems constantly flying at you, whether it is finances or moving or job changes or, good Lord, getting on the same page of parenting. But then you're going to
right.
have bombs of conflict constantly going off. You
Yeah,
got to know how to navigate all that stuff. So, really, your mission in marriage is almost like preparing for, I don't want to say battle against your partner, but going through battle with your partner, with your spouse, and how you can navigate that together. It's so important. So let's transition to, one thing about soldiers. I know whenever my son signed up, he signed up for 6 years. He is committed for
good for
yeah,
6 years to the military. And so when we step into marriage, so often we step into it because we love the person. We have these feelings about them in the beginning, right? And it may be that attraction. It may just be a good, mushy feeling of I love you so much. But then once you step into marriage, it's commitment.
yeah.
And it's no longer that feeling. It's that choice of no matter what, through thick and thin, no matter the battlefield, I'm with
Yes.
you. You're my person. So can you talk to us about the importance of commitment in marriage and how that applies to leadership?
Well, that's really the name of the ministry. Valor and vows. Biblical valor is standing strong and standing courageous, just as God instructed Joshua to be strong and of good courage, that he would go with us wherever we would go. That's valor. And you have that valor in the military. You are to be strong and you are to be courageous. And then you have the vow, that oath of office that you take, that you will defend the president of the United States against all foreign and domestic powers. Well, it's that sacred vow in marriage that we have with God.
Mm.
It's not a contract, it's a covenant. And that covenant is not to be broken. God does not ever break his covenant with us. Marriage is the direct reflection of our relationship to him. And he loves us enough to tell us that he will never leave us, that he will never forsake us. I had someone talk to me about love the other day, and they were talking about the book, and they said, it's just so simple. And I said, well, you're right. However, it's not that simple to live it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talk about the biblical construct of covenant, when you talk about what that true construct of love is, it's literally getting yourself out of the way every single day. It's saying, not my will, but your will be done. It's saying, I'm going to love you when you're not lovable. I'm going to serve you when I don't want to, when I'm tired, when I've had a bad day, when the kids have been driving me crazy, or when he's had, the weight of his calling fall upon him, where he's had to do a death notification or a notification of one of our service members or family members that committed suicide. And yet he still has to come home and be that biblical leader and be that support system. That's the true definition of that vow, just like you make to your country. There's no like, hey, I'm just not going to show up for work today.
I'm
No.
just not feeling it.
Yeah, lives are at stake. It's crucial that you are faithful to that vow that you made, just as it's crucial that you're faithful to the vow of your marriage.
Man, I love that so much. You know, marriage is hard, and you're going to go through so many different seasons of hardship. And so often we let our feelings guide us
Yes.
instead of letting our choices guide us. Like whenever we choose something, and like you said, a covenant, I just love that so much. It does reflect our relationship with God. Marriage is that reflection of Christ and the church. And you've got to spend time with the person to build that relationship, to grow. But man, everything you were talking about is so selfless. How do
Yes.
we get there? Whenever you think about soldiers, right? So many people say, thank you for serving our country. You are selfless. You are willing to give your life for our country. And yet so often are not willing to give up our where we want to go, where we want to live, the lifestyle I wanted for our spouse. We're not willing to, give up anything. We want it and we want it all, and I want it just the way I want it. And it causes so many rifts in marriages. How do we
Yes.
get to that selflessness?
I think it's for the military piece, speaking from my perspective, another reason why I think the book is powerful is because it's in military terminology. A lot of all of our chapters are kind of laid out in military terms that apply directly to marriage. So your commitment to the military that you signed up for is an oath, and your commitment to your marriage is an oath. So I think for military members, we kind of understand the sacrificial piece. We understand what it means to, get into a covenant situation, or take an oath to support and defend. And I think a lot of times we start taking that more serious than we do our marriage vows and that oath. But if we can get that centered, if we can understand the importance of the oath we take in our marriage is just as important, because if we can keep that strong, it flows into, the rest of our lives, into our into the military oath. So in leadership, in that, I think is the man taking that leadership role in the house, through that oath, because we do that through our oath in the military, and so being that direct leader at home and standing up for what's strong and what's right and foundational, in our marriage and faith centered in our marriage, I think is the key to the leadership piece for your marriage and that commitment and that oath and that covenant.
Yeah.
But
well, one of their core values is service before self,
Ooh.
excellence in all we do. So in the core values that they believe, that they recite, that they have ingrained into their soul, they're acknowledging that regardless of how I feel, I'm still going to serve. So that takes a significant level of humility.
Absolutely.
That level of humility has to be applied in your marriage. From the spouse's perspective, I was chatting with someone yesterday about how many times I've had to adjust my career and where I would have been if I would have just stayed in one place and had 20 years of experience and all of that. And they said, man, that's gotta be tough. And I said, it was, but God really changed my perspective when I took that to him in prayer, because that was a difficult time for me when I had an opportunity to promote and to be very financially successful, but then have to say, I'm so sorry, I'm getting ready to leave. And I can't do that in good conscience to you. That's not fair. The Lord showed me this. What I sacrificed in my career, God gave me back double in my calling.
Ooh. Oh, please say that again. Please say that
What
again. That is so good.
I sacrificed in my career, God gave me back double in my calling. And
There
it
is
was,
so much there to dive into.
yeah, it wasn't the picture that I thought it was. It wasn't the 401k, stock options, great, all the things, but it was every spouse that I get to connect with, every relationship that he gives me the opportunity to speak life into, every time I get to tell my story and let a young spouse who's coming in know that she's not alone, that there is a God who is there for her, that she's never without hope, she's never without help. Those things, when I allowed myself to change that perspective, no longer did I see my role as a spouse as a deficit, but now I see it as an asset.
Yeah.
Because I
You know,
have a privilege to ride alongside him in this journey.
and that is true. Like, I've got your back, right? No soldier left behind. Whatever you're going through, I'm there with you to pick you up. But there's so much to dive into. I wish I could talk to y'all for just hours and hours. Matt, when you were talking about just that oath, that commitment, that training, all the things that the military does. It's almost like they center you. It's they almost rewire your brain and your mindset to do hard things, right? Because they have to. How
Yeah,
else are you going to survive as a soldier? But
right.
then, you know, Kristina, you were talking about how they have all these phrases, these mantras that help anchor them, right? Service before self, and how you, as the wife of the soldier who's constantly going out on deployments and things like that, having to move, having to pick up and leave a job and then get a new job and all those things, how you are then committed to him through all of that. And then you dove into how, you know what, your purpose in life is not your job, your title, your 401k, it's your calling, and your calling can happen anywhere and everywhere, and it's with the
yes.
people that you're with. There's so much leadership goodness and all of those things of how do we show up? How are we training our brains and our mindset to show up to walk through hard things and stay committed? But
Yes.
then how do we recognize that moments and situations don't define us because our calling is higher than that? I mean, my mind is blown, y'all. I'm so excited. It's such good stuff. So let's talk about now that let's say we're through it, we have a mindset of commitment. We're going to show up, we're going to serve, be selfless, be humble. But you know what? The battle's coming. The pressure is coming. How do we thrive under pressure?
I would say, for the spouse's perspective, first and foremost, don't forsake your military community. Um, what I've seen over the last 25 years has been kind of a deterioration in the spouse's engagement into the military community. And there are many, many, many reasons for that. But geographically, where we are right now, many, many people don't live on base anymore. So they think, oh, well, I'll just go, have my groceries delivered, or I'll just go to, this or that, and not really go on base for those services that exist for us. And I would caution them, please, please, please stay involved with the spouses community, the spouses clubs, the Key Spouse Alliance, Military One Source, your chapel family. Why? Because we speak the same language.
Mm-hmm.
My sisters that I have had during the course of our time, those were my ride or die family members when I didn't have my family members.
Yeah.
And not because my family didn't or did want to be there. Geographically, it wasn't possible. They can't go to, if you're in Alaska, they just can't go and be there for you when you're sick. That's not realistic. That's not logical. But yet my military sisters watched my son when I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed, or vice versa. Help me pick him up from school when he's gone, or, whatever the circumstances. So I would say definitely, please, please hear my heart. Don't forsake your military community. Stay involved as best as you can. There are resources that are there for you. Take advantage of them, because when those seasons happen in your life, that community just gives you a daily reminder that you're not walking this thing alone.
Mm. And the
Isolate
devil so bad wants to isolate you, right?
100%.
Nobody understands what you're going through. Nobody's going to get it. Stay over here, don't engage. And, whether you're in the military or civilian life, like whoever is, it's almost like seasonal. People go through battles, right? One spouse is going to go through a hard season and the other one's kind of on the outskirts. And it's like, man, they're not able to pour into us, right? The people that are not in battle, because they're pouring into the battle, trying to solve it or win or whatever. And that the purpose of community, way to hit the nail on the head of that. You are never alone in those circumstances. There are people who understand what you're going through. Reach out. Do not isolate. That's exactly where the devil wants you to be, in isolation. So, Matt, talk to us from the military side of the one going out and doing battle, knowing that your responsibilities at home are you're not able to be there and take care of. And I'm sure that brings a lot of guilt, but also you're out there with your brothers, right? And your sisters in battle. Like, talk to us about how thriving under pressure whenever you're the one in battle.
I think having conversations with your spouse, well in advance, and staying on the same page, communicating well with your spouse. That way, when those times do arise that you have to potentially leave for a while, or you have to, work a certain amount of hours to accomplish a certain task, mission, that you are on the same page with your spouse and they understand that commitment. And that's where a lot of our folks seem to, have some issues or make mistakes, is they enter into this, with an understanding that they may not have to be a part, or they don't understand how to do that. And having those conversations early are important, and talking about with your spouse, what are we going to do if you do have to leave, or what's life look like with the kids, or financially, what does this look like? That way you're on the same page. You have a game plan, because for every other piece of life you have a game plan. Typically in the military, we're planners and executioners. We have a plan and we see that plan through. That's how missions work, and that's how it should work in your marriage and in your relationship. So I think for us, we have to sometimes drop everything and focus on our task.
Yeah.
And what's important for us is having the latitude and longitude to do that from home, and having that, I don't want to use the word security, but it's more of a, knowing we have that love and we have that dedication, we have that, backing from your spouse and from home, because that enables you to work freely
Yes.
in your mission and in what we're trying to accomplish, task wise in the military, whether it be a training environment or real world scenario. We have to be able to focus on that, because we're responsible for other people, not just ourselves. And like I said, as a counselor, a lot for our couples, where I kind of see that go south is a lot with our younger couples, because they don't understand that commitment yet, maybe.
Yes.
Or they come into the military not understanding that both of you are taking the oath, essentially.
Yes.
Because, whether you're serving or not as a spouse, you're still heavily involved with the mission and the military in general, because you're susceptible to wherever your other spouse is going, or whatever they have to try to accomplish in their career field. So you're riding that journey too, you know.
Absolutely. And I love it. You know, the heart of what you were saying, that the proactive conversations, you know,
Yes.
I think in pictures and things, you know, and we lived in Houston for 15 years, went through several hurricanes. And I'm like, in marriage, you know, you're going to have the occasional tornado, something that hits you, you did not see coming, right? You're going to have
Yeah.
a problem attack your marriage you didn't see coming. But for the most part, you're dealing with hurricanes where you have about a week to prep, you know? If you just
Right.
have those proactive conversations and support each other. And one of those things is, and I think a great conversation to have is, take divorce off the table. Like, if
100%.
you just say, you know what, divorce is off the table. So yeah, we're going to go through hard times, we're going to go through storms, but divorce is never an option because we're committed to each other. And like you were talking about, Matt, going out, I can't imagine how difficult it is for someone leaving their family, knowing they're leaving a burden to the people they left behind, because now they have to do it all, you know, with themselves, and hopefully lean on community. But then you have a mission to go do too. Like, that stability, that comfort of knowing, you know what, my house is going to be okay
Yes.
because divorce is off the table and we're committed to each other. And there's that selfless serving on both sides of that. And it's so good. Your book, guys, I mean, not only aligns just with marriage and military, but man, the leadership principles, like, again, proactive communication. It's
Yes.
amazing what it does for you.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about preparing. We've talked about commitment. We've talked about, you know, how do we kind of lead through and thrive under that pressure. So now let's talk about endurance. Let's talk about the long haul, right? When,
Yeah.
you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, is a popular phrase. So how can we have long-term success in our marriages, and how does that just fill over into every other aspect of our life?
We talk about that enduring love, and one of the things that, that Matt and I learned throughout the course of our marriage, we're on the same team.
Oh,
And that phrase right there has revolutionized our approach. When you think of sports, Matt's an avid sportsman and sports fan. He can articulate it so much better than me, but just the team structure. I remember Matt saying to our son, you're a fourth quarter player. That means we don't stop until the game's over.
yeah.
That means we don't lose momentum. That means we don't get lazy or complacent, even if we're winning. Even if there's a large margin and the score is 30-0, we're still finishing the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
And that is the mindset that we have when it comes to enduring love for the long haul. We're not done until we go before the Lord. There's always going to be something for us to do in our marriage and in the mission of our marriage. The importance of vision. Habakkuk talks about, or I'm sorry, not Habakkuk. He says, write the vision, make it plain. But then also in scripture, where there is no vision, people perish. If you don't have a vision for your marriage, you're going to have issues. What does that vision look like? Well, what is your vision financially? Where do you want to see your family in 20 years? Where do you want to see your children in 20 years? How do you want to see your household structured in 20 years? When you have that mindset that we're future focused, you can't help but keep that momentum. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's one of the best dates you could ever have, or, you know, getaways with your spouse, is to just dream again about what kind of life do we want to build together? Like, get that front of that picture, you know, puzzle box. And so you can build it. And I think it's so important.
That's one of the things that we've talked to our couples about is, okay, what do you want your military marriage to look like?
Yeah.
You guys have signed up for this. So what gift do you want to give to our country? How can you be a blessing to our people? What are the things that you can do, not only just for you, but for your family? And when they look at it from that perspective and they can say, you know what, I'd really like to help our education system. I mean, we have some of our spouses who, I mean, have just done incredible things, even with special needs. So when you go about it from that mindset of, okay, we're going to write this vision down of where we are right now and where we even want to see our military marriage in 20 years, you have something to look forward to. It no longer becomes a chore, it becomes an adventure.
Absolutely. So, Matt, taking the vision, I know sometimes, and my son even said it after he was done with basic and he came home for a very short little leave stint. He's like, this feels weird. I have just gone months of being told what to do every second of the day to now some freedom. So as you transition from military life to civilian life, as you go through those seasons in marriage, how do you stay focused on that vision whenever what you've been doing for so long changes, when your
Yeah.
title changes, when your job changes?
Yeah, man, that's the toughest one we deal with. I think right now we're dealing with that with our folks. Working where I work now, all of my guys have a tremendously stressful job. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's normal schedule for 3 years to 4 years. And they have families, relationships, marriages. It's so them trying to navigate that and grow is very difficult. And that transition back to a different lifestyle afterwards is becoming really hard for them. I for us trying to tackle that piece, it's trying to prepare them in advance for no matter what season of life you're in, or no matter the tempo of the mission, the tempo of your marriage shouldn't change. The way you tackle your relationship with your spouse shouldn't be determined by the level of mission set that you have to carry out. You should be focused on taking 100% in on your marriage at all times, and always cultivating that. So I don't like when couples try to uh, balance their marriage based on their work or their mission. That's kind of out of whack. If you're constantly trying to get stronger as a couple and get better as a couple and learn and grow together, then you should be able to endure whatever's thrown at you. Yeah, it'll be tough at times, but you have the tools then necessary, and you have the capability with one another to endure a tougher season. So uh, the transition piece is something we're definitely constantly trying to work on and grow in and get better at helping our folks. I think that's a need out there, as well as premarital leadership. Um, excuse me, is another goal and another area of improvement for our guys. So hopefully that painted a little bit of a picture for
we
you.
talked to a lot of them, and the ones that we have seen that have done it successfully are the ones who have sat down before and had some type of plan. It's chatting the other day and talking about the word retirement, which is a very dirty word for me. I don't like it first, because one of my biggest fears is that I will go before the Lord, and if I don't have anything to give him, I can't imagine. I just that I I don't want that. So regardless of where you are in your life, there's always something that you can do. So the couples that have taken that and have actually implemented it, whether that's volunteering, whether that's, some of them go on and work corporate jobs when they retire. But it at some point when it does stop, the ones that we have found with the greater rate of success individually and collectively are the ones who don't stop serving.
And what's interesting was when it comes to the suicide rates, one of the bases I was at, the age, it was like 9 out of 10 individuals that had committed suicide at that installation were all over 50.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
they had retired, from years of service in the military, and were now in a different season of life and had no plan on how to how to navigate that. They went from great success maybe, or or always being needed and, having something to focus on, to being what in their eyes may be insignificant now, and, kind of lost and not really knowing how to navigate life anymore. And that just creates a loss of hope. And that brings on your depressions and those type of things. And then they get to a place where they just don't want to do it anymore, and so it was interesting to see that age demographic and tying it back to, retirees,
Yeah.
and not having a plan, as she said.
We had one of them. It was so funny because, he was a very, very high functioning, high level command fighter pilot. I mean, just go, 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 go all the time. I think his total time in was 35 years. And he decided he was going to take 6 months off. His wife called me in the first week. And she said, he's driving me crazy. I'm not one of his subordinates. I don't, this is insanity. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, he said he was going to do 6 months. So it's not like he's not going to have anything to do. She says, yeah, but it's not, I need him to do something now. And I said, okay, well, what is he, what are his plans? What does he want to do? And he ended up, teaching. He ended up going to flight school and decided he was going to start teaching other young pilots and mentoring. And, but because he did that, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about it. They didn't need it. He had, done very, very well for himself, but it was that purpose. It was the value. So yeah, so I say all that to say those that have a plan, that are willing to pivot and find what they're passionate about and go do that thing. Those are the ones that we have seen have tremendous success within that transition season versus those that just stop cold turkey and don't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they find, like you were talking about, that purpose, that calling that's higher than their job title, right?
Yeah.
But I have to confess, I so felt that whenever the wife said, he's driving me crazy, I'm not a subordinate. My husband told me on a couple occasions, I am not a student and you are not my administrator. It's like, I'm so sorry. Sometimes it's hard to change your tone whenever you go all day and you're, wearing a certain hat and then you come home. It's like, oh, I forgot to remove that hat. My bad. Sorry. Oh man.
I
So
got
thank you.
out of that for sure.
Uh, yeah. So thank you so much for just everything that you've shared. So in thinking about all of the wisdom that you lay out, the tactical, practical application for building a stronger marriage in Valor and Vals, what are some key takeaways for our listeners that they need to apply to grow in their leadership in their marriage?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is kind of what the book's, key verse is from Ecclesiastes 4. When it talks about that 3-strand cord, it's not easily broken. That is where it all starts for me, and making sure that you're aligning your priorities with your marriage and your spouse correctly. Starting it out with your each of your individual relationships in Christ, and letting that flow down through your marriage into your family and into your jobs and into life. Don't get those priorities mixed up. That's honestly where I see the majority of the mistakes in counselings with couples. Is it's just a misalignment of their priorities. A lot of times it's nothing significant that's happened that's causing their issues. Every now and then we get that, but typically it's just a misalignment in life. And honestly, that will throw you off. If you don't have God at the top of your marriage, it's going to throw you off. And a lot of our couples don't get that, right off the bat. And you have to kind of show them and guide them and teach them about, having a personal relationship with Christ first. So I think that verse, Ecclesiastes, is based on that, and understanding and running your marriage through as a 3-strand cord with you and the Lord and your spouse. Just kind of, if you picture all giving each other a hug at the same time, that's how it should look.
Yes.
That's right.
So for me,
yeah. So good. So good. All right, guys, what is one poor decision you would warn our leaders to avoid? Don't do this one thing. You're better than that.
Go ahead. Okay, so I'll
not
say
being transparent would be.
That's a good one.
Would be for me. Be transparent in your in your leadership as in the marriage. Be transparent in your leadership to your folks. Show them that you're willing to be the first boot on the battlefield and the last boot off of the battlefield.
Yes.
Lead by example.
Yes.
And that's why we wrote Valor and Vows the way we did. Almost everything in that book can apply to marriage, and it can apply to the military. It's very similar, and it all ties into God's word. So that would be mine, I think, transparency.
Well, and to your point, Matt said something to me a long time ago. It's funny, he and I actually worked together on base, and he was kind of my supervisor. And he said to me, I will never ask anything of you that I would not do myself.
Oh, preach. Yes.
And so many times we do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would advise those that are listening, take that mindset. Don't ask something of somebody that you would not go and do yourself. And that comes from being a servant leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Matt and Kristina, thank you so much for being here and sharing about your book, Valor and Vows. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your book? And where can they go get your book, Valor and Vows?
Oh, yes, ma'am. So we have our website, www.valorandvows.com. And we have our resources, the link to purchase the books. They are available, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart.com, all pretty much anywhere books are sold. But that's where they'll get all the latest and greatest updates on what we've got going on. And there's links to all of our social media in there as well.
Some merch on there.
Merch.
There you go. I love the hats. Love it. So good.
We've
Nice.
got dog tags, and actually we just talked about it this trip. We're going to get some military challenge coins. So if you don't know what that is, your son definitely knows what that is. And it's kind of just a fun little thing. We're going to have some of those made on and on our website as well. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I love the work you're doing. Marriage just flows over into every aspect of our lives. And I just thank you so much for being here, sharing your message. Again, I can't wait to give that book to my son to read it. I've already kind of read through it. It's amazing. And I just thank you for the work that you're doing to help us build stronger marriages and in return, become a better leader.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Appreciate
It's been awesome.
All right. Thank you.
See.
Until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Ecclesiastes 4, verse 12. Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Hey, it's Bethany again. If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. Also, be sure to rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership, and through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. If you feel this podcast is helpful, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and coworkers, or anyone who wants to grow in leadership, but also have harmony between their work and home life. Thanks, and I'll see you again in the next episode.